P.D.Q. Bach was a composer who lived in the same era as Mozart and Beethoven, but unlike the two latter composers, P.D.Q. Bach was virtually unknown, considered today as the most neglected composer in the entire history of music. Hence the reason why you've probably never heard any of his pieces. Born in Leipzig, Germany on April 1st, 1742, P.D.Q. Bach was the youngest of the 20-something children of Johann Sebastian Bach, the senior Bach being regarded today as one of the greatest composers in the history of Western music. Many of his children also went on to have successful and accomplished musical careers, including CPE, JC, and WF. P.D.Q. on the other hand, and I quote, had an absolute and utter lack of talent. In fact, while the senior Bach gave musical instruction to all of his sons, he completely neglected P.D.Q. As a result, P.D.Q. ended up renouncing music at a very young age and only began composing well into his 30s. However, the more he wrote, the more obscure he became. One possible explanation for this was that P.D.Q.'s life was plagued with alcoholism, as he was noted to have been in an almost constant state of inebriation. He was also notorious for stealing and plagiarizing the works of other composers, even being referred to as a manic plagiarist of the highest order. P.D.Q. Bach died in 1807, and his music fell into complete obscurity, until the 20th century when the zealous efforts of the professor Peter Schickele led to a revival of his compositions. And if this biography sounds a little ridiculous to you, and maybe even a bit too bizarre to be true, well, that's because it is. P.D.Q. Bach never actually existed. You see, Peter Schickele never discovered the works of P.D.Q. Bach. Rather, P.D.Q. is the ultimate brainchild of Peter Schickele, who, by the way, was a real person. Whereas CPE and WF stand for Carl Philipp Emanuel and Wilhelm Friedman respectively, P.D.Q. stands for Pretty Damn Quick. The idea was first conceived when Schickele was pursuing his master's at the Juilliard School, and was simply meant to be his comic alter ego for his in-school performances. In the end, Schickele managed to map out an entire musical universe that juxtaposed satire, absurdism, and slapstick comedy. In other words, all of P.D.Q.'s compositions are actually Peter Schickele's, and all are meant to poke fun at well-known works of the classical canon. Some examples include 1712 Overture, which parodies Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, the Short-Tempered Clavier, which parodies J.S. Bach's The Well-Tempered Clavier, and The Abduction of Figaro, which parodies not only Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro, but also opera in general. A personal favorite of mine is the Beethoven Symphony No. 5 Sportscast, which features a live commentary of a performance of the renowned symphony as if it were a sporting event. Other quirks of the sportscast include an onstage referee assigning a 30-measure-long penalty to a horn player after the latter incorrectly plays a note, an oboist performing a cadenza solo against the directives of the conductor, with the two subsequently engaging in a physical altercation, and a bass player who somehow suffers an injury to the groin and whose substitute is an electric bass guitarist. Needless to say, all of P.D.Q.'s compositions are witty and humorous parodies of well-known works, and are probably some of the best examples of musical comedy. In the many subsequent years following the creation of his fictitious composer, Peter Schickele devoted himself to presenting P.D.Q. and his works to the rest of the world. Unfortunately, Peter Schickele passed away not too long ago, but the legacy he leaves behind will remain forever. Not only has his work brought classical music to a broader audience, it also serves as a reminder that art music doesn't have to be elitist.
Very interesting. I get people telling me that they sometimes got interested in classical music through P.D.Q. Bach too, which is pretty strange if you think about it.
What made Peter Schickele and his beloved P.D.Q. Bach so special was the ability to both entertain and educate. But don't take my word for it. Why don't you check it out for yourself?